Welcome to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development and Consulting, the show built to provide support for your ongoing leadership journey. Today, I have a great opportunity, just like Cindy and I've been able to do over the last month and a half, 2 months, whatever it's been. I get to chat today with a fellow that I just met within the last year, but it's been a pretty cool friendship. Turns out we live maybe a mile or so apart. And when we first met, it was maybe a little bit uneasy for everybody else in the room. He and I were both cool with it, and we've had a good time with it. And you see Glenn smiling right now, so I won't tell the whole story, but everybody else was cautionary in the interaction, but it's been a really, really good interaction. So I serve on the Harrisonburg Professional Firefighters Foundation board with Glenn and some other amazing people. But in that initial Wes coming in, chatting with the foundation board about here's this idea of the 100 Club that Glenn and I'll talk about more later. Glenn asked me some hard questions, and I respect the fact that he did because he wanted to protect the integrity of that board, and that meant so much to me. Now, before we go into some of the nuts and bolts around that, I want to turn it over to Glenn to share a little bit about his background, which he doesn't talk about much, but it's an amazing background, his experience maybe in different industries and so on. And then we'll dig into the Harrisonburg Professional Firefighters Foundation Board and why it matters so much with the Leadership Legacy Experience that we're hosting 4 months from the time Glenn and I are, I'm sorry, 4 weeks from the time that we're recording this message right now. So Glenn, talk a little bit about your background and your industry, and then we'll dig into what we're really here for.
Thanks, Wes, for having me. I grew up a farm boy in Kentucky and left there and joined the Coast Guard. Went 4 years in the Coast Guard and jumped out of that, got into law enforcement in the St. Louis area. Absolutely loved law enforcement. That's where I wanted to be since I was a kid. Worked my way through there, became a detective. Was assigned to Major Case Squad, got some accolades along the way. My family eventually moved to Virginia. So I stayed in law enforcement, got on with a municipality in Northern Virginia, stayed on there for a while. But after being a detective, I wanted bigger, better things, or at least I thought I did. And so I eventually got picked up as a special agent with some of the feds. Spent some time doing that, did a lot of traveling, worked some pretty significant cases. But then family time, I was losing. And I ended up getting out of the feds and going to a large school system as a internal affairs investigator, basically, which is internal affairs, what I also did as a fed. And anything that had litigation potential against the division. We had 14,000 employees in the school division, and whether it was fraud or embezzlement or inappropriate relationships or theft, any number of things, I would do the administrative side of the investigation, working alongside a detective from the police department if there's a criminal element to it, and then also alongside an investigator from Child Protective Services if there was some kind of abuse allegation. So we did all of our interviews together. All three of us would, sit down and interview X, Y, and Z together. And that way, they didn't have to go through multiple interviews. Did that for a number of years till I retired. I was able to retire at the age of 55. And then a little bit before retirement, we moved out here to Shenandoah Valley. And I was trying to find ways to get plugged in. I have some neighbors that are very ingrained in the community, and they were trying to find ways for me to get plugged in as well. And along the way, I met Ryan Sodakoff, and he was already on one foundation, and he was talking about forming the Fire Foundation and asked if I would want to be part of that initial group. And by all means, and that pretty much leads us up to today.
That's fantastic. You're humble about your background. You and I had a pretty in-depth conversation about that a month or two back, and I was just amazed. I actually compared you to Gibbs from NCIS, and you blew me off on that. But and you're even smiling as I say that, but that's kind of what it took me to. I appreciate all that you've done. It's such an impactful part of everything that you've touched. I especially love, because I've met your sons. I think 2 sons, right?
Yes, sir.
I've met both of your sons, and I've gotten to see some of the relationship you have with them. And my son, he's 30. We got to see him earlier today. We had his son for a little bit today. And I praise God for the relationship I've got with my son today. And I think it's because in 2010, I turned down a job that would have taken me out of the country 2 weeks out of every month, maybe 3 in some cases. And I wasn't smart enough to do that. God kind of changed things around in the way the job was structured, and I didn't accept the position. But the reality is, I think if I would have taken that job, it would have probably cost me that relationship at the time, and so on and so forth. So I'm really loved what you said about that, because I see the relationship you have with your family, and I know you've invested heavily into that. So that's really cool. Now let's dig into the board. Throughout your career, you've had a very specific purpose, and you've worked really, really hard to serve people. You talked about what you did in the school systems, and I made a note that I'm going to chat with you about when we end this recording about that. But what was it that you saw with the foundation when you heard Ryan first start talking about that? What was it about the purpose for the board that you said, yeah, I think I want to be involved in that?
Being in public safety for a number of years, I know what the sacrifices are from these men and women, the weekends, the birthdays, the holidays that they miss with their families. And one of the things that Ryan had shared with me was there was a group of 3 firefighters from Harrisonburg that had set this foundation up just to help their comrades if something went wrong, if they needed something. And there was no source of funding for the board except for these 3 firefighters that were taking money out of their own paycheck and putting it in every 2 weeks or every month, whatever they got paid. There were, I think, a couple other firefighters that chose to have money deducted out of their paycheck, but basically their funding was limited to, I'll say, 5 employees donating their own money to help others. That is the ultimate, in my eyes, the ultimate need to be filled. These men and women are making the sacrifices. They're the ones running into these burning buildings. They're the ones coming to the car accidents, to different emergencies in people's life. They should not be using their own family's money to help others when there's a board of us that can step in and do that for them.
Yeah, that's powerful. And it really ties back to some things that I'll share in the book that I wrote recently, Leading with Clear Purpose, the events themed around it and so on. I share something about, hey, people don't do things. They don't shy away from difficult tasks because of the difficulty, the lack of compensation and so on, or we wouldn't have volunteer firefighters, right? I've got a very, very close friend that he just sold some businesses. He's in between, hey, what do I want to do next professionally? And he's invested thousands of hours in the last 2 or 3 years and thousands of dollars into his certification, his courses, and so on, to run into burning buildings, literally. And he's done a bunch of that as a volunteer, albeit I think it's probably taken more time than his last professional career job did. But it's more about that purpose. Now, Glenn, one of the things that we're doing through this event, and the way I got connected to the foundation, was through a conversation I had with Matt Tobey, Harrisonburg's fire chief, about a year and a half ago, where he says, hey, Wes, you've got a wide reach in the business sector. I've got this idea. Would you help me launch it? And that really comes to where we're at right now and launching the 100 Club. Based on what you know and what you see with that, how will that help sustain the board long term, as not just from the starting of the founders, but really when we build that out over time and create a 100 Club that's productive? We've got a lot of members in it.
As a young board, we're still trying to learn our way to create different revenues or streams of funding coming in. The 100 Club is a genius idea that it's actually really simple, but it's genius. And the foundation creates relationships with local businesses, business owners, patrons, and they're asked to donate or commit to donate $100 a year, $10 a month, $100 a year. And, we're going to put this little, medallion or sticker on their business and show that they're support of that. But this is revenue that's going to come in every year. And we're not being greedy. $100, I think some people said, oh, let's do $100 a month or something. No, you know what? But let's $100 a year. We'll in turn put out publications and we'll recognize these businesses, put their logos and stuff out there saying that they support Harrisonburg Fire Foundation. And it's just a genius idea. And I mean, I applaud you and Cindy for helping us launch this. You all are the catalyst in getting us going. And I love the idea that Matt Tobia asked you to come up with it.
Yeah, we're really excited about what we've done. I mean, historically, and we still have, I shared this in our board meeting a few days ago, we still have a wonderful relationship with the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. They do some amazing work and they serve a gob of people and they make a dollar stretch as good as any organization I've ever seen. But this was something that we said, gosh, we can help with this because to your point, that $100 once a year, it's not a huge commitment, but the power really is in numbers. And Glenn, before we hit the live button and started recording this, I said, hey, I'm not very good at many things. If I've been good at anything, it's been trying to figure out who are people better than me that I can learn from. And praise God, I get to be friends with you because you're better than me and I get to learn from you, right? I mean, it's this, and that's the essence of what the 100 Club is. How can we have 50, 60, 70, 100 companies or individuals that are involved in this to say, we'll do $100 a year. While that $100 isn't a big deal, if we've got $100, that's a bigger deal. And we can do it sustainably. So I'm kind of giddy about it. As we sit here today, there's, I think, 22, 23 that are partners on the event with us. That was part of their package. I've got 2 or 3 folks that have said, hey, we're going to be attendees. Is there a way I can do it individually? Yep, we got you covered. Come to the event. We'll get you hooked up with that. The foundation's going to have a trade show booth. And if you're seeing this after the show as part of the digital resource and so we've created, go to the links. It'll be on the website. We're taking care of that in the background as Glenn and I have this conversation. Now, one of the things I would love for you to share about, because you've got way more experience in it than I do, Glenn, talk about some of the things you've been able to be a part of doing and you've seen the board do to support, whether it's firefighters locally and not always locally. There's some regionally you've been able to help, or even first responders. Maybe it's spilled over into law enforcement, whatever. What are you most proud of? What are you seeing them do that the community probably don't realize?
One of the things that I don't want to say battled with, but one of the things that I've repeatedly talked about at board meetings, the mentality with firefighters is completely different than other first responders. And there's a brotherhood there that is probably second to none. And police departments have the thin blue line, and but the firefighters, it doesn't matter in their mind. It doesn't matter if their local brother is in need or if there's a guy 1,000 miles away that's in need. They're going to help. And so I've tried to work with the other board members to understand that, because what I keep reminding myself is that the 3 firefighters that set this foundation up, let's keep their vision in place. And so along the way, we have helped support either financially or through equipment, injured firefighters locally, as well as throughout the state, well, even outside of Virginia as well. We generally will go through Chief Tobia to the request will come through Chief Tobia. Hey, here's somebody I think we need to help. We have funded building ramps on somebody's house that needed wheelchair access. We have funded buying an injured firefighter a hospital bed that he needed that was going to be better for him than what was being provided by insurance. We have bought equipment. So those are kind of the things the general public will not see. If you see a fire department using a particular piece of equipment, you're assuming the city paid for it. Probably, but in some cases we do step in. And there's other, I'm on the police foundation as well. Like there's an example. I know we have, I think, paid for the last 2 canines that they have put on their department. And those canines are $9 to $12 grand a piece. So that foundation, the police department foundation, has been in place for 15 years. Where the fire foundation, we're just setting this up. We're just getting going. We're starting our 2nd year. I've been in contact with some other foundations around the state. Chesterfield's got a really good fire foundation. And so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we're just trying to see what works and what doesn't work.
Very cool. And Glenn, in transparency, and this isn't a knock because I absolutely have loved the friendship I've developed with Matt Tobia over the last 3, 4, 5 years since he's been in the area. If it would have just been for Harrisonburg professional firefighters, case closed, the end. It's not that I wouldn't have wanted to support. It's the event that we're doing, I couldn't have limited our reach to, because as we sit here today, we've got north of 100 companies that will be represented at this event. We've got folks coming from as far south as Atlanta, as far as north as New York City, and all the way out to Oklahoma. So it's a regional event, right? And I couldn't have isolated, hey, we're doing a fundraiser for Harrisonburg. While that's cool, people outside of Harrisonburg don't care. But because the reach is there and you already have a track record of saying, here's what we've done, it made it real easy to say, hey, this is what we're doing. And while it says Harrisonburg in name, it's not isolated to, obviously, we're going to take care of local first. But if there's a request and we can, that's the part that I was most attracted to, because I've had a rule in my own life for the last 4 or 5 years. I don't do boards. And here we are, right? We're having this conversation. Now, you've mentioned a couple projects. Is there a specific one that you're most proud of that you feel like, hey, if it wouldn't have been for us, even in an infancy of a board, it may not have happened?
No, because, and the reason I say no is because these 3 guys that had started this board, they would have found a way to get it done. If they had a need for it, they would have found a way to get it done. I will qualify that by the hospital bed that we had, or hospital style bed that we had helped. It was expensive. I want to say, well, we split it with Chief Tobia. He was so adamant to help this other gentleman that I think we paid $2,000 or $2,500, and Chief paid the other half of that out of his own paycheck, not out of the company or not out of the city funds, out of his own personal paycheck. And I don't know if he could have done the whole thing. So, I hope we don't get the follow up. So we don't know, did that bed make a difference? Did it not? But I have the faith in the 3 guys that set this foundation up, that if some need had come up, they would have found a way to get it done. They're super guys.
Glenn, I'll share with you on that note. One of the things that I don't ever think made it in front of the board, because we missed some meetings because of crazy weather through the winter and so on, had someone make a request to me because we knew I was connected with the board, didn't realize I was on the board at the time. But I shared it with Ryan, and Ryan says, let me just take action on behalf of Stephen Toyota rather than the board, because we're not going to meet in time. And he covered some of the expenses with materials, where this particular guy and some of his friends were doing a roof for a law enforcement officer that had some issues. His wife was going through cancer, and it was a pretty tough living situation. They just didn't have the money to fix a leaking roof in the middle of the winter. And Ryan stepped in when he couldn't get board's approval because we weren't meeting, and jumped in and did that too. So I'm sharing that to give a plug for Ryan, but also to say, it's a fantastic group of folks in that board. I mean, in watching that interaction, I'm thankful I get to know those folks. So,
one other comes to mind, and this was just a few months ago. Chief Tobia brought a request to the board. He had a young firefighter within her first year of employment, she had a medical issue come up, required emergency surgery, and she went out. I think she was out of work 3 or 4 months. Quickly burned through her allotment of leave because she's a new employee. City of Harrisonburg policies and regulations did not allow for any type of leave transfer or anything. So they could hold her position, but it was going to be leave without pay. And he came to the foundation and we helped her financially with her mortgage, with other bills, with different things, because Chief Tobia says she is going to be a rock star. And I think he would have done this for any employee, but she's in her first year, in her first few months, and an unexpected medical issue comes up. And that's, let's give her a fair chance to see if this is a career for her or not. Maybe she will be a rock star, maybe not. I don't know. But you know what? Let's give her a fair chance to at least get beyond that first part of her career.
I had not heard that story. That's pretty powerful. And I come from an HR and safety background, so I'm very versed in what those policies are. Dear God, I hate policies. I understand why they're in place, but I also understand how I've seen folks, even when they're out on workers' comp or they've got different things going on, even with insurance, things hit. And that's a reality. And it's so neat to hear that the foundation can do that. And one of the things you said, hey, don't know where it'll go. It's a seed that we sowed. There's a book that says, as you sow, so shall you reap. And we don't get to control where that's at, but we did it with the right purpose. You guys as a board, I wasn't part of it, but when it was there, you did it with the right purpose and it'll come back. It'll be okay. It sowed into somebody's life, and that's a good thing to do. Now, Glenn, we've talked around this a good bit, but how when Ryan was talking about starting the board, how did the vision for that board align with what you really cared about personally? You saw, here's what the board's going to do. This matters to me too. How do we connect the dots?
When I lived in Missouri and in Northern Virginia, I was usually volunteering on some kind of committees, giving back. Like I said, when we moved out here 2019, I tried to find ways to get plugged in. Ryan's comments interested me because it's a brand new board and there's identifiable need for first responders in this community, which obviously I'm close to on the first responder side, whether it's police, fire, EMS, whoever. But not to repeat, but that story of the 3 firefighters paying for this, funding this out of themselves, it broke my heart. And if I can, volunteer a few hours here and there and do different things, you know what? Let them guys stay on the rig. They're firefighters, men and women, are crazy enough as it is to run into these burning buildings and to put themselves in places that I don't want to put myself in. And they do it for people they've never met.
Yep. And
I still say going into the fire profession is nuts. You should be checked, but Lord, we got to have them. We love them. And what would we do without them?
Yeah, that speaks to me. Glenn, you'll get to meet 4 weeks from today, one of my lifelong friends that he rode his bicycle to and from the Timberville Volunteer Fire Department when he was 14 years old, and sometimes even to fires. And if he got lucky after the fire, they'd throw his bike on top of the truck and they'd take him back to the firehouse because it was closer to his house. And that's what he's done for his career. He's going to be emceeing the event. And oh, by the way, just 2 years ago or so, he went through some pretty significant rounds of chemo and different treatments and stuff from fire-related cancer. I mean, not only did he spend 30 plus years running into burning buildings, he almost died from the cancer that came from running into those buildings, but that's what he was passionate about. And he still is. It was that purpose for him. And that's another piece that speaks to me about the foundation. So love that you shared that, because, hey, they are a little bit crazy. I always thought Ben was a little bit crazy for doing it, but praise God, he's willing to. Very cool. Glenn, if you were talking to a young professional and they were growing in their career and they says, hey, what advice would you give me that I can really earn leadership influence, not just be a supervisor or manager, but really earn the influence that it takes to make a positive impact on the people around me, what would you give them?
Anybody in any profession can be a manager. You can manage an inventory closet. You can manage stock. You can manage anything. It takes a special person to be a leader. A leader will not only equip the subordinates so they can do better, so they can step in if he or she is out for the day or out for the week, something with medical, whatever. The organization will survive if his or her underlings step up and take part or take over. A leader is not threatened by the underlings that they're going to outdo him or her or show him up or whatever. The mentality is that you're helping them grow. And as they grow and start to blossom and find themselves, find their inner confidence, the organization as a whole is worth a whole lot more. Again, I can manage, a group of pencils sitting over here, something like that, but a leader is actually going to help those pencils be the most they can be. That would be something that I would try to share with somebody, as well as listen more than you speak. Listen and make sure you understand what is being said. Don't be thinking about your response while you're listening. Really take in what's being said to you, then prepare your response, as time goes.
Both are powerful. And as I'm hearing you say those, it's taken me to places in my life that I was not intentionally, praise God, I got the experience to do it, but I had people that would talk to me, and I had enough sense to listen when they were talking. So thank God for those opportunities. But also the places to where, gosh, Glenn, sometimes I was just over my head in my own role, and I had to count on people to support me. And as they progressed in their career, they got better in some of those things than I ever could have hoped to be. And it was some of the most rewarding experience I've ever had, is watching people grow into being better people, even better than me, because I had a little bit of a chance to have a fingerprint on that. And wow, what cool advice. That's good stuff. Thank you for that. What have I not asked you that I should be? What would you like to share that might be something that people say, holy crap, that's really cool?
Well, let me back up one more thing. If you want to get better at your job, not you specifically, but you in general, if you want to get better at your job, teach somebody else how to do it. It will make you a better person. I spent a couple years as a field training officer. Rookies coming out, yeah, there's a lot of things you got to teach them. But as you're teaching them, I kept learning myself. And it was a good refresher on what to do, what not to do. But you want to excel in your job, train others, work with others on your job. You'll see the improvement in yourself.
So you don't need to name a name, but can you think about 1, 2, 3 of those folks that really invested into training you over the course of your career that you look back on and say, man, I'd run through walls for these guys?
I would.
And my guess is there's
all they have to do is ask.
What's that?
All they have to do is ask.
And maybe not always ask. If it came to your attention and they didn't ask, you might still jump in and do it, right?
Yes, sir.
My guess is there's dozens, if not hundreds, that you've done that same thing for, whether they ever say it or not, that feel that same way about you because you've done that for
them. I can't name anyone there, but I hope so.
I have zero doubt. You don't often hear about it. It's one of the things Cindy and I work with folks on. Say, hey, think of the folks that have made the most impact on you and tell them, because we usually don't. And hey, I don't enough, but I try to be intentional. There's 2 or 3. One you'll meet 4 weeks from today is a West Point grad, first Gulf War, wonderful dude. He's the one that told me I was fat in November of 2019. He said, man, I'm proud of you, but you're fat. And he's the only person in my life I could have heard that from at the time and not wanted to hit in his face. But it's that guy. And I try to tell him all the time, man, you've invested in my life. I appreciate you. And I don't think enough people say it. Thank you for sharing that piece, Glenn. Wow. Teach other people, but you make an impact on their life by doing that. When you teach other people, grows you too, spot on, but don't miss the impact that you can make on somebody when you do. Now, what else would you share that I've not asked you about? Is there anything that I've ducked?
You know, I'm fortunate to be able to retire early. Both my boys live here locally with their families. I've got back into the rural setting to where Becky, my wife, and I, we have a few animals here. We enjoy just a few. It's not work, but those 30 years I was out in the workforce, well, more than 30, but I just did not realize how much I missed rural living and taking care of animals and stuff. And at this point in my life, we are free to travel, to do whatever we want. We're both retired, but I have zero initiative to go anywhere because I absolutely love interacting with all the animals that I have on my farm. And we have some horses, we have some miniature donkeys, we have some fainting goats, and just a few of each, not big. And then we also have some miniature Highland cows. And these animals, they make me laugh. They're so loyal. They don't talk back. They don't argue. But they're hilarious. And I am so blessed to be where I am at this point in my life. I still have health. And I feel like I'm on vacation every day. And, you know, if I can help some of these other first responders, you know, maybe eventually work their way to that, because they don't do it for the money. And, you know, if I can be a small part of that, I'll donate however many hours I need to donate.
Yeah, very cool. That's the purpose that gets me out of bed in the morning. Who can we make an impact on? And I love building the friendship with you, because I know that's what drives you too. Who can we be a blessing to, and who can we serve in the process? So, Glenn, thank you for taking the time to do this. I know I had to twist your arm a little bit for it, but you're amazing. I appreciate your friendship, and I've just truly enjoyed it. I told Cindy this morning as we were heading somewhere how much I've enjoyed getting to know you over the last year or so. If you're accessing this, if you're hearing it, whether it's live with me and Glenn right now, or if it's later on through the digital product that's part of the event, and you've got a need for continuing education credits, specifically in the HR field, reach out to us. Send us an email at admin@dove-development.net. We'll hook you up with a 45-day all-access trial to our full Leading at the Next Level program. I think we've got north of 160 hours worth of content in that we've written over the last close to a decade, all based on leadership, workplace communication, team building, and so on, based on experience that we've had with the companies we get to serve. Hopefully it adds some value to you. No strings attached. If it helps, great. Glenn, thanks again for doing this. I look forward to seeing how we can really establish that 100 Club, that it serves the foundation long term and really helps create a launching point to be able to make a bigger impact on other folks.
Wes, thank you for what you and Cindy are doing.
Yep. Very much, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to lock arms with you on it. Make it a great day, guys, and God bless.